Hola todos, hello alomal, ni hao, konnichiwa, hello everybody. I am Jarrett Ross, the GeneaVlogger. Welcome to another stream on the GeneaVlogger channel. Today we will be doing polls. I'm sure a lot of you have seen my community polls for a long time, and I actually did make a video a while back about it and never released it. And I kind of realized that recently. So I think I'm going to be putting that video up as a Patreon exclusive / YouTube member exclusive. So if you're a YouTube member or a Patreon patron, keep your eye out for that video coming out at some point as an exclusive video. But that's like a lot of the older polls. I think I did that video like 2 years ago or a year ago, or it's been a while. So we'll be going through a lot more of the recent stuff. So thank you everybody for joining. I'm going to go through a lot of the hellos as we usually do here in the beginning of the stream. Just make sure I'm coming in nicely. I see I'm a little glitchy today. See if I can adjust that a bit, make it a little bit better. Is that any better? No, that's actually worse. That's worse. Let's see. I don't think it's too bad. Once I share my screen, you won't be able to see any of those glitches. So, all right, let's do our typical going through the hellos. Hello, Alan, coming in from Madison, Wisconsin. Thanks for joining us. We have Bryce Gardner. Hello, welcome. Sharon Phillips coming in from New York. Welcome, Sharon. We've got one of our wiki treers, John Tyner, coming in from Dublin Hospital. I hope you're doing okay. Yeah, if you haven't noticed in the beginning, like right before the stream starts, or I guess technically after the stream starts, but before I actually start being on the stream, I have little emojis of me popping out. Hello, Sandy from Cary. Hi, Karma Gal coming in from Nebraska, the Cornhusker State. Always wonderful to see you. Hola from our Portuguese, or not Portuguese, Brazilian contingency. Gazillion. Or wait, no, is it Brazil or Portugal? Why am I getting that mixed up? Because I don't know. You'll tell me. I'll keep an eye out in the in the chat. Torsten Helling, hello. Wonderful to have you coming in from California, aka Stephen L. Always great to have you. Katie coming in from Ohio. Oh, Portuguese. Okay. Lo siento, lo siento. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Tisha, hello. Wonderful to have you as always. Had CT scan today. Blood pressure was low, but up to normal now. Well, good to hear it's back to normal. Definitely low blood pressure, not a good thing. Laura Smith coming in from Massachusetts. Wonderful to have you. Said Ater? I don't know. Sedator? Are you like being sedated? I guess. I don't know. Hello from Chicago, from the 630, or maybe not the 630. I don't know. Hola, mi amigos and amigas. Hello, Dan. Hola. ¿Cómo está? Muy bien. ¿Y tú? Gracias. Yeah, that's with the. Well, that's why I was like, wait a second. For some reason, I don't know. You're the Portuguese contingency. We've got it set for sure. Tisha coming in from Kansas City, Missouri. So we saw her hello before. Now we know where she's coming from. And we have our Twitch contingency. Buenas noches desde España, Catalonia. Wonderful to have you coming in from Spain. We've got a couple of people on Twitch. So one of them chatting. So hello, everybody. Yeah, now that's Spanish. Yeah. I don't know Portuguese. I know Spanish. And I know Espanol de Mexico. La Cocina Espanol. I used to work in kitchens. And so actually, funny enough, Spanish was my first language, but then when I was 3, then I completely like started to use English more because I had a nanny up until I was 3 who was from Guatemala. So most of my words, my first words were Spanish. And then a little bit later, we had a nanny who was from England, which actually, if you saw my recent video about my trip to Europe, my nanny, Louise, she and I met up and she's in that video. So definitely check that out if you haven't seen that yet. But yeah, just a fun little side. But I guess most of my Spanish now was learned largely in working as a chef in various kitchens in Pittsburgh and in Wake County too. So yeah, working in that restaurant industry. All right, we've got Red Penguin coming in from Northern England. Well, wonderful to have you. We have Douglas Huseman coming in from Texas. Did I say that right? Huseman? Huseman? I assume Huseman. Jose Lopez 94. I found out through my dad that I have a great grandmother on his side who was probably from Africa, hence why the Ancestry DNA results show a 0.9% Nigerian and 10.3%. Oh wow, like the 0.9%, it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's interesting. But at 10.3%, now I'm really intrigued. You've got to tell us what's the next part. I'll kind of wait just a second. Oh wow, the screen really does a perfect job of masking what this is. If you can figure out what this is, I'm not showing too much of it, but yeah, cliffhanger for real. All right, well, we'll say the hellos for the people coming in. Harry's Numbers, hello from Plymouth, UK. We have Dawn coming in from Edinburgh. I know that there's like multiple ones throughout the world and they're pronounced differently. At least I think there's multiple ones. Okay. 10.3% North African ancestry. Also, shout out from your Chicago boy turned Cali boy. Yeah, and I went the opposite direction. I went from California. I was born in LA, then moved to Chicago when I was about 5 or 6, and then moved to North Carolina when I was about 10. So, yeah. Okay, wait a second. Oh, they're Invisimonster. Wait, what's a drink? What am I missing? I don't know. All right, well, let's continue. Karma had a Spanish teacher in high school. Portuguese was her second. Spanish was her third. She switched to Portuguese halfway through a lesson, confused all. She wouldn't let us interrupt to correct her. I almost learned Portuguese in college. When I got to college, I forgot why, but I ended up getting signed up for this Portuguese course, this intro to Portuguese. And then I ended up deciding to switch back to Latin because that's what I took in high school. And now I kind of wish I'd stuck with the Portuguese because it would have been really cool to be able to know Portuguese, especially with the Portuguese Jewish community of Amsterdam records that I'm going through all the time that are in Portuguese. Which if you didn't see my most recent reaction, you get to see a lot of those records. Okay. All right. I probably shouldn't be doing hellos too much more. All right. Let's just do the last few. We've got Sarah Eva, hello from California. And then Harry's Numbers, which you did say hello before, but coming in from Lara, Plymouth, Devon, UK, on the ocean coast near the River Plym. All right. Well, let's get into the main purpose of today, which is the polls. So, scroll down a bit. So, for those who are not familiar, I'm going to put this in the chat. I run these polls on my community channel. Let's make this bigger. I run these polls on my community channel because, for one, it's just a fun way to engage with the audience, but also I found that I could come up with a lot of questions that kind of made you think about your tree in ways maybe you hadn't before. At least that's what I felt like they did. So if you haven't answered any, this is the link I just put in chat, both in Twitch and YouTube, where you can go and answer polls. I'm going to continue doing polls after this stream, probably do future streams going over future polls too. But like I said in the beginning, for those who missed it, I did a video going through a lot of polls a couple of years ago that I just never released. So I'm going to be releasing that video as a Patreon exclusive / YouTube member exclusive. So if you're a Patreon patron or YouTube member, kind of a thank you. So you get to see this old school video where it's like, oh, wow, it's like a few years ago. Everything looks different, or everything looks like it used to. Okay, so recently over the past few days, I did a bunch of like really simple ones. And just kind of some fun ones. Let's see. I'm going to kind of adjust this. Let's edit this. Just want to adjust it to make me bigger. I think that's good enough. That's good enough. Okay. So the first few ones we'll go through somewhat quickly because I think they're pretty easy to discuss because I'll kind of talk about different things in relation to me with it too. So how many adopted siblings do you have? I have none. And then here we have the answers. So 91% have none, which I think I was expecting. A large majority, most people don't have adopted siblings. But then most people that have adopted siblings only have one adopted sibling. And then 2 adopted siblings and 4 or more are kind of the same. And then 3, surprisingly, had 0, which I guess I do wonder, like, you know, in terms of families, of how many people are adopted into families that adopt children, because I think of stuff like Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie where they have like 7 or 8 adopted kids or something. But I think one interesting thing with this question would be to include first, like, split it into 2 camps. For those who are adopted, how many adopted siblings do you have? And then for those who aren't adopted, how many adopted siblings do you have? I think that'd be kind of interesting just to see, you know, is it more common, which I would think it would be, that people that have, or that people that are adopted would have an adopted sibling, but maybe I'm wrong. Hence why it'd be interesting to see. All right, gonna take a quick look at, I'm gonna keep checking chat. Something I should mention, which I've mentioned in a lot of streams before, But I will try to keep an eye out. If there's questions and stuff to talk about, I'll answer them. But if you have anything that you want to guarantee that I will answer, if you go to YouTube and do one of the super chats or super stickers or whatever and put your question in there, I can guarantee that I will answer those. Part of the reason being those get set to the side so that like I can click them and they don't get lost in the chat. So if you can ask your question 10 different times in the chat if I don't answer it the first few times or whatever, until I answer it. But if you want to guarantee that I'll answer it, just want to mention that. All right. Now for the siblings one, that was actually part of, basically I was doing a whole series of siblings, because at first I was going to do how many siblings do you have? And then I was like, well, wait a second, we should do, I guess there's full siblings and then there's half siblings. And so then I was like, well, maybe I could do one for full siblings, one for half siblings, and then one for other siblings. But then it was like, well, for other siblings, it's basically just adopted siblings or step siblings. And the only other one that I thought would be in-laws, but that, I don't know, siblings, in-laws, I don't know, maybe, yeah. But yeah, so I just did those. So I'm gonna skip this one just for now. We'll get into it in a bit. And we'll just do the other sibling ones really quick. So for how many full siblings do you have? I only have one. But this one had the most answered, I think, out of all the ones. Yeah. And so only under a quarter have none or don't know. And then most people have just one. I think this one would be an interesting one to see split between where people are located. Just see, are certain areas or countries or even maybe just continents have higher amounts of siblings. Granted, I know you can look those numbers up through a lot of different stuff, but yeah, so we have one at 39%, two at 22%, three at 8%, and then because YouTube only limits me to 5 options, I always have to do 4 more. I would have loved to gotten this one up to like 6 or something just to kind of see. Because I imagine that as you get further and further out, it goes further down and further down. But I do wonder, there are a lot of families that when they have a lot of kids, they have a lot of kids on average. So yeah. All right. Now for half siblings. So if you don't know what a half sibling is, I hope most of you do, but for those who don't, a half sibling is just when instead of having a mom and a dad that you share with a sibling, you only have one parent that you share. So, maybe you have the same mom, but different dads, or the same dad, but different moms, either way. So most people, 69%, have none or don't know. I kind of was expecting that. 12% have one, 8% have two, 4% have three, and then 4 or more is at 7%, which it's fairly similar, I think, to the full sibling ones, except for I thought it was interesting that for the 4 or more, that had a much higher amount, because here 4 or more is just about is equal with having 2 half siblings, whereas for full siblings, it's a little over twice as much for the 4 or more. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. And then for step siblings, which if you don't know what a step sibling is, that's when one of your parents marries somebody and then they have or that person they're marrying already has children. So those children become your step siblings. So you're not blood related. And there was one comment in here that was did bring up an interesting thing of these questions get complicated for an adoptee who has identified all their blood relatives. Which families are we talking about? And at first it was like, oh, well, really easy, whatever, any true step siblings. But then as I even started commenting, I was like, wait a second. But then it was like, but don't include adopted siblings, because I had a separate poll. But then it was like, unless they're adopted step siblings, because you could have an adopted step sibling if your parent marries somebody who had a child that they had adopted, because they'd be a step sibling, but they were adopted step sibling. So it's like, oh yeah, I guess, yeah, it can be complicated. So I just thought that was just kind of an interesting aside. But in terms of step siblings, let's go back here so we can compare it to the others. There we go, step siblings. Yeah. So way more have no step siblings or don't know. Granted, I guess with this don't know category, well, maybe it wouldn't be less, but I imagine most of the people answering in this one truly know they have none. But then again, your step parent may have children out there that you don't know about. That's always possible. But same sort of pattern here, except the 4 or more is even bigger now, getting closer to 1. But that could just be because the numbers are just much, much lower. So, all right, let's check chat. I see that I have a sticker, Red Penguin, with £5. Thank you very much, Red Penguin. I have a cinefilm of my great grandparents' wedding in 1951. I've made it into a DVD, but I want to preserve the original cine. Any ideas? Now let me see. Do you know what type of film it is? I mean, I'm not the best with film. I went to school, or when I went to college, I got a minor in film, so I did work with like different stuff. But I guess you'd have to kind of identify what specific type of film it is. I'm not familiar if cinefilm is a specific one unto itself, but like, is it Super 8 or 16 or something like that? And then just look up best ways to preserve it. So that's what I assume you mean by the original, is just having that original physical copy preserved. So you might be able to seek out professionals for something like that. Funny enough, I actually do have a lot of various like Super 8 reels and things from my grandfather. Granted, I actually don't think many of those are like home movies or anything. Like, I actually don't think any of them are. I think a lot of them are actually like reels of old like kids shows and stuff. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. But yeah, that'd be my best idea. You know, and at the very least, you might be able to look up just online guides of, how to help preserve this type of a film or something. But I know a lot of those older films, they don't hold up very well. Especially, I can't remember the names of it, but that really, really old school film that was highly flammable. Because there's one that's really flammable. All right, let's see. All right, I see a lot of people saying how many they have. So wow, 16 half siblings. That's a lot. Interesting. I wonder if maybe that's maybe that's one of the reasons why like half siblings and step siblings have higher amounts on the 4 or more, is because it could be through both parents. So, your dad could have children with another spouse, your mom could have children with another spouse, or, they divorce and both get married, or even get married multiple times. That's a lot. That's a lot that you could have. So that makes sense. Yeah. So I guess it would be kind of interesting too to add into some of these questions, half siblings and step siblings, is it through just one parent or through both parents that you have that? So answer in the chat if you want to. That's interesting. But then Tisha with 8 to 11 half siblings. Am I reading that right? 8 to 11, or are you saying something else? Youngest of 3. Yeah, I have a 5th great grandfather who had 2 wives, 7 children with first, 16 with second. Yeah, that's a lot. Now, were the 2 wives concurrent? Was it a polygamous marriage, or was it, one after the other? Because 7 and 16, I mean, that's a lot for both. So yeah. 3 full siblings, no half step nor adopted. 3 full siblings. Oh, here we go. It was helpful. I think it is 15 millimeter, but I still think I'm quite lucky to have it, as it is so old. Yeah, I mean, that stuff is really, really old. sorry, it's always really cool when you have stuff that's really, really old. And I'm kind of like wanting to run downstairs and go and see if I can find the film. I'm pretty sure I know exactly where I have it downstairs, actually. That's from my grandfather. If you all want me to come and show it, I mean, you're just gonna be looking at reels of stuff probably, but you won't be able to actually see it. I don't think. We could try. That'd be kind of cool. But if not, I won't. All right. Let's see. There we go. Flammable film were nitrate based, which I think were really like they figured out that it was very flammable and then kind of did away with it. But I can't remember how late that was. So actually, for anyone who's seen the movie Inglourious Bastards, I believe that's the film they use to like light the theater up at the end. Is they use nitrate based film. So thank you, Torsten or Steven. Oh wait, excuse me. I meant to hit this one. I have one full sibling and 2 half from my dad. Does my cousins count as step siblings if my dad married my aunt after mom passed away? Yeah, they would. They'd be your step siblings and your biological first cousins. So that's actually, it's not an uncommon thing to happen for a lot of families. And if your dad and your aunt have children together, that's going to make those children your 3/4 siblings because they're going to be a first cousin because your aunt's children and a half sibling because your father's children, thus a 3/4 sibling. So always interesting. Okay. 13 of my half siblings are from my mother, 3 from my father. Oh, wow. Interesting. Yeah. So that's kind of what I was thinking was a lot of the folks that have the much higher amount. Granted, I think, 13 half siblings is also a lot unto itself too. So that's got to be a big family get-togethers whenever you're all if you get together. But still, do you have any full siblings as well? John with 2 step siblings, and then does anyone have 3/4 siblings? So just as I mentioned before, from what Douglas Huseman said, yeah, it looks like we do have some. Then we have Lynn, 2 full siblings, 3 years and 10 days between my older and younger sister. Yeah, one of the old questions I had asked that I think I review in that video that's going to be on Patreon or for my YouTube members. In that one, I had asked what's the distance between, or like what's the largest gap between your youngest sibling and oldest sibling. Although for that, I think I didn't distinguish between full or half or step or whatever, just, oldest to youngest. Or I think I specified biological. Yeah. I don't have any siblings and quite happy about it, but my great grandmother had 14 full siblings. Wow. So then we have Sharon has 5 full siblings. Harry's number, my family tree has 202 people. All right. Gotta get building. Now, is that just the family tree itself, or is that ancestors, or Jose Lopez 94? So if your cousin is Dutch, does that mean you are Dutch too? Not necessarily. In my case, I have Dutch cousins. It doesn't make me Dutch, but I do have Dutch Jewish ancestry, so I have an ancestral connection to the Dutch in a sense. Or at least Dutch culture, but I do have cousins who were, they're Dutch. They live in the Netherlands, but now it doesn't make me Dutch or, yeah. All right. Karma had a great grandmother, was one of 20 full siblings with 2 older half siblings / cousins. My great grandpa's first wife died and he married one of her sisters. Common back then, not too uncommon today either. And then lightning fan, ding, ding, ding. Not sure what that one was for, but there you go. Ding, ding, ding. 8 to 11, my dad being married multiple times, about 10 kids so far. So mom only had 2, leaving me with 0 full siblings. Okay, interesting. Interesting. Okay, let's jump back to the polls. So we skipped ahead of this one. So how many total descendants do you have? I have none that I know of. Although I am hoping to change that. So any single ladies out there, your GeneaVlogger single too. All right. Anyway, for most people, I thought this one was interesting because it kind of, it broke the mold of how we saw it for the siblings. Was that none, don't know, 64%, which I wasn't sure what to expect, but I kind of expected probably a higher amount of none / don't know, because being on YouTube, I think YouTube's largely a younger crowd, meaning that there's, less of a chance that they've had the chance to have kids or anything like that. But then for 9% of people, which there were only 343 that actually responded to this versus the full sibling one, which was 681. So don't know if that skews the results. But then for 2, there's more people that have more than one, or there's more people that have 2 descendants than just one, which I thought was kind of interesting. And for 3, then it drops down below both 1 and 2 for 6%. And then for 4 or more, it's only 10%, which really, really makes me wish I could have extended that to include 4, 5, 6, 7, and then of course, an interesting one with this was, I didn't specify kids. I wanted it to be full descendants. And so it was interesting to see some of the comments that were in here of people kind of mentioning, 2 sons, 10 grandchildren, and, lots of, people that have, not just children or grandchildren or whatever. So yeah, very, very, very interesting one. And then continuing on from there, if you haven't seen this video, by the way, definitely go check it out after the stream. It's on my reaction channel, not on the main channel, but good video where I react to History with Hilbert, where he talks about Jerusalem of the West, which is Amsterdam, and that's kind of one of my specialties. So yeah. All right. And then, all right, interesting one. Do you have any family, genealogy, or DNA related tattoos? And this one I knew was going to be mostly no, with a few yeses. I wasn't sure what that percentage was going to be, but I guess I kind of wasn't expecting it to be as low as 5%, partially because I know YouTube is kind of on the younger side, but it's not like, I noticed for a lot of my audience, when I say younger side, it's usually over 18. So a lot of 18, 20s, and 30s, and obviously a lot more on the older side as well. But just in terms of YouTube versus other places I see genealogy stuff, I notice a lot more on the younger side. So I kind of thought it might be higher. Now, I didn't say anything in the poll about whether, what my answer was, because usually I do that. And the answer is yes, I actually do have some. I'm not going to say anything more than that. So if you didn't know, your boy has some tattoos, not just one. But yeah, so we have 5% yes, 95% no. And then we had a few people kind of talking about some of the stuff that they had, and I wanted to specify, family, genealogy, or DNA related, because this actually popped into my mind because I saw somewhere someone got their DNA results tattooed on their arm, which was like, no, don't do that. As soon as the update happens, you're going to be like, oh God, what do we cross it out with tattoo and put it in? And I don't know. It's just so funny. But I saw that and I was like, I wonder, how many people might have something like that, but not just, DNA related or whatever, but I know what for a lot of people, when someone in the family passes away, they'll get a portrait of them on there or some sort of thing or something. Or for family, they'll get a heritage sort of thing, I think I saw someone say something about some sort of the clan crest and stuff, Scottish related, stuff like that, or flags, stuff like that. So coats of arms and things, So just kind of a broad array. All right. Oh, and then another reaction I did, which if you can't handle a lot of sarcasm, it's a tough video to get through. Let me check chat. I haven't checked chat in a bit. Right. Oh, interesting. I do not have full siblings. My father left my mother when she got excuse me. My father left my mother when she got pregnant, although he had introduced her to his parents. When I was 3 months old, my mother moved together with my stepfather. Oh, interesting. Do you have a relationship with your father or anything like that, or is it just kind of like you don't even know him? So that's unfortunate. Sunny Zitrone, what are you are single? I was sure you were in a relationship. Yeah, no, I'm single. Sarah, I have 2 kiddos and we just did their 23andMe for fun. Hubby and I had it done. Hubby and I had done it in 2010. Wow, that's actually that's much earlier. I was surprised that they, our kids, only share 45% DNA. And the fact that you mentioned that your husband and you did it in 2010 likely explains why your kids only show 45% DNA. So with the 23andMe test, there have been new versions of the chip that they use to figure out the DNA. So they use what's known as a SNP array chip by a company called Illumina, or a SNP micro array chip. So these are, these are the chips that they use, and I mean they make chips for all sorts of stuff, but as time has gone on, these chips have gotten better and better and better. So when you look at 23andMe, I don't know if it'll show it or exactly where you can go to find it, but I'm sure you can find somewhere where it'll show it. You probably are either the V1 or V2 chip. You're probably the V1. Whereas if your kids just did 23andMe, they're on is it V5 or are they already on V6? Yeah, I think there are. Let me see. But basically, whether it's V5 or V6, you're V1 or V2. And so you can see there's multiple steps between your chip and their chip. Now, what's the main difference between the chips? The number of SNPs they're reading. So the SNPs are single nucleotide polymorphisms, which is just a very fancy word for specific markers on your DNA, where if it's a letter, if it's an A instead of a T, then that indicates something specific. So sometimes it's they use SNPs for medical stuff. So if you have a specific SNP that has this variant, that could indicate this. But they also use it for family history and genealogy and all of that stuff. So if you're on the V1 or V2, that chip, I don't know exactly what it is, but let's say it was about 600,000 SNPs. The V5 is probably like 700,000 plus SNPs. So that's why it's 45% versus the full 50%, because for your kids, you're only matching 45% because the other 5% they didn't test from you, so it won't show as a match. So hopefully that actually explains that, and a fun little interesting thing for everybody to see. I just went through and answered all the questions that didn't show up in my feed. Yeah, not all of the questions show up in everyone's feeds, unfortunately. So definitely go and check out my community every once in a while to see what newest polls are going on there. And I think during this stream, I'll try to go to some of the older ones that especially I think have a much more interesting thing to it. Like, how far would you have to go to find your closest ancestor if you traveled 200 years in the past and you're sitting in the exact spot you're at, something like that. Like for me, 200 years ago, I'd have to travel thousands of miles because none of my ancestors were in North America 200 years ago. Yeah, none of them were. Yeah, none of them. Just had to think about that. But okay. Jarrett, why is Irish genealogy so difficult? Research within Ireland very difficult. Irish records are sketchy. Now, I'm not a expert on Irish records, so I have limited experience with it. Granted, when I say limited experience, it's probably more than the layman's experience with it. But my understanding is largely because with the history of records in Ireland and how civil registries were done, things were not kept a hold of very well, and I don't think they were done very well. And basically, when it comes to Irish genealogy, what you have to do, and it's very difficult to do, is you have to locate where they came from. So not just the county necessarily. So I know a lot of people, you'll be able to kind of identify, oh, it's County Cork, County Sligo, County whatever. But then you'll have to kind of figure out where were they, what church would they have belonged to, because it's often the specific church records, in my experience, that you get the most information to actually expand your tree for Irish genealogy. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult, because then you're looking at it where every single church, it's going to vary on what records they have, how well they kept them, how accessible they are. And I in my research for some of the YouTuber family trees stuff I've done. For those who are not familiar with that series, I always have experts helping me, because when it comes to genealogy, you're constantly going into all these various histories and communities and little bits of knowledge that you can figure out generally, but if you can find someone with an expertise on it, it can open up the world and understanding what's going on. So for some of my guests who have Irish ancestry, every time I've had Irish genealogists, who some of them live in Ireland and are helping me with the research, basically come back to me and go, yeah, there wasn't really anything we could find, unfortunately. And I've had some of these, I've actually had like 3 different researchers do that. So on the same case, like, here you go, they couldn't figure it out, pass along to another researcher, they could, and all of them in Ireland. So yeah, it is a very, very difficult one to research. But as I mentioned, I'm not an expert on this. So for like the history of civil registry in Ireland, I'm not super familiar with it exactly, but my understanding is it very not a very strong system. All right, Lynn, I'm 60 and have no children, but my parents have 5 grandchildren and 2 great grandchildren. So yeah, it's kind of getting smaller each generation, which is kind of interesting, I guess. But then, well, yeah, no, never mind. 5 grandchildren. So how many siblings do you have? I would love to see those who do have those tattoos. Yeah, that's the tattoo thing is something I did that's kind of very personal for me. So it's not something I talk about much at all, and this will be probably one of the very few times that it's kind of even mentioned. I have 2 t-shirts that are genealogy related, both custom made. I've actually made some genealogy shirts beyond just my genealogy channel, which, if for those who don't know, my favorite genealogy shirt I have is my Pokemon genealogy themed shirt. Basically, it's the Pokemon themed letters for genealogy, and then it has a caption of "Gotta find them all," because you gotta find all your ancestors, gotta find all your relatives. So yeah, that's one of my favorite shirts. So if you want to, go buy it. Okay, jump along here. I see that we've got a lot of chats going on. Yeah. Yeah, my ancestors were all Church of Ireland and Presbyterians, still difficult. Actually, it's probably 1921, 1922, Irish Civil War, not 1916. And that was okay. Ireland only has 1901 and 1911 censuses available. Most of the others were destroyed by fire during 1916 Rising. Some fragments from earlier censuses survive. Yeah. So these are some things that I don't personally know, but this is why it's always good to have people with various expertises. My expertise is on the Dutch Jewish communities of Amsterdam and Jews in Ukraine and American Jewish history, and some British Jewish history, and that kind of stuff. So it's like, I could talk a lot about that kind of stuff, but even though I work on a lot of other things, it's with genealogy, it's constantly learning. And I think that's one of the things I love about genealogy is that, like, I used to sit down with friends hanging out, like when I was like 22, getting drunk, partying, doing that whole thing. And, we'd be pre-gaming for a party or something, hanging out with friends. I'd be like, well, what do you know about your family? I start building family trees. Everyone's drunk around me and I'm pulling up like records online and they're like, all their minds are blown. And for me, I would end up like the next day, go home, be like, I wonder about that. And I ended up building my friends' trees and just like learning about all of this history that I didn't know about before. And that's just one of the cool things about genealogy is you really learn history in such a way that it's just much more meaningful, in my opinion. My brother has the coat of arms. Does that count? Well, it counts for your brother. It counts for your brother. Okay, I think I jumped back. Let's keep going forward. Update here. I met my father first and only time when I was 20 years old. Since then, we call a few times in a year. I had met my half siblings not knowing from him previously in another part of the country. Oh, wow. Interesting. Thank you for updating us. Thank you. Okay, and Sarah Eva giving the update. I think the kids are the V5 chip. Yeah. So you can update your chip. Whether you'll have to contact 23andMe to find out exactly what you need to do. At the very least, you'll have to just order a new DNA test and do it again. But I think they have a process where you can just get the chip updated where if you told them to hold on to your sample, if you told them to do that, then they can do it. If you didn't, then I think you have to retest. Yeah. So I'm just jumping through a lot of the chat because it's been going along. A lot of people chatting, which is great. Rob, Goedenavond, good evening. Goedenabend. Wait, Goedenabend. I don't know what that means. I know Goedenavond. Hello, hoe gaat het? Okay, and then we have is that Hannah Banana? Wait, oh, it's Hannah Banana. Oh. Okay. Cool. Hi, Hannah. Which DNA test is best for Jews? Well, I guess it varies and depends on what you're really looking for. In a sense, I don't know. The best process, I think, for someone who's Jewish to test to get the most out of it would be to test through Ancestry.com, download your raw DNA file, and then upload that to Family Tree DNA, MyHeritage, and GEDmatch. That's the best process, in my opinion, because that gives you the most DNA matches out of any of them. The only major databases that you're really missing are, you can upload to Living DNA still, I think. So you can upload to Living DNA as well, although that's probably one of the least helpful for Jewish genetic genealogy. But then MyHeritage has a lot of people from Eastern Europe in their database, a lot of people from South America in their database. And for a lot of people who are Jewish, we have a lot of relatives living in both those places, as well as throughout other areas of Europe and throughout the world. MyHeritage kind of has the most worldwide representation in their database, even though they're not the largest database. So being in their database is one of the best for the matches. Now, if you're looking for the whole admixture percentage stuff, that one, I don't know. That's a really hard one to give any answer to because especially for Jewish readings, it's just so difficult to get any really good view of what it's. There's a lot of difficulty with it. But that would be my suggested process. All right. Sorry, I'm jumping through a lot of stuff. Sunny, I love Pokemon too. That's probably why I have so much fun catching all those ancestors. Exactly. We've got DJ's Variety Channel in the house. Hello, wonderful to have you as always. Okay. Just jumping along. All right. Let's get back to the questions. All right. So this has just been sitting up there for everyone to stare at, for me not to say anything about for a minute. How many hours a week do you do genealogy research? None, 27%, which is interesting because I wonder, this is what a question where if you don't do any genealogy research, how often do you watch my channel, sort of thing. Like, I do wonder, how many people watch my channel who don't do any genealogy research themselves, or at least have not yet. I imagine that there's a lot of people that find my channel, watch a good amount, and then basically kind of just, hit a point of, maybe I should try this, but then less than 2 hours a week, that's most people at 30%, which I kind of figured, most hobbyist genealogists, 2 to 5 hours a week, you're getting into your more, you're more uh, got the bug type of people. 5 to 10 hours, 10%, and then more than 10 hours a week, just a little bit more than the 5 to 10 hours. Once again, would love to figure it out even further out. But I think once you're getting into the doing it more than 10 hours a week, that's when you're like, you're a serious genealogy nut. You're a serious genealogy nut. It's not uncommon for people who are really into genealogy and kind of do it more as a hobbyist thing. Well, every once in a while they'll have a week where they spend a lot of time on it, but most weeks it's not really doing that much. Whereas I guess I meant to say how many hours a week on average, but I think that's kind of implied. So yeah. So definitely getting into them more. So very, very interesting. All right, now we're gonna get into some of the ones that are a little bit more difficult, kind of ones that make you really think about your tree in a little different way. So, question is, how many biological third degree relatives? So that's a third degree relative is a first cousin, great grandparent, great aunt, great uncle, great niece, great nephew, great grandchild, half aunt or half uncle, or closer. Do you know about, but you have never met? This includes relatives who may pass before you were born or are still alive, but they must be biological relatives. And then for me, I list them, the numbers 15, 6 of my great grandparents, which I feel like for a lot of people, you're kind of lucky if you get to meet a great grandparent. So I had 2 who I met. One lived to be 100, the other lived to be 109. 2 of my great aunts who I never met, who I believe both of them had passed before I was born. Or no, actually, one of my great aunts had passed before I was born. The other one, there was, I won't go into it, but never met her, but she passed away when I was like 6 or 7. 5 of my great uncles, all of whom passed away before I was born, and then both of my grandfathers who passed away before I was born. I never knew any of my grandfathers. All of my grandfathers had passed away before I was born. Now, with this question, this one I think is got kind of difficult for people because third degree, the whole degree relatives thing can be difficult to think about. But it's a little bit easier if you go by, a degree at a time. So 0 degree relative is yourself. First degree relative is those relatives that are one step away from you. So first degree relative would be a parent, a sibling, or a child. So then a second degree relative is 2 steps away. So a second degree relative would be like a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle. A half sibling is technically a second degree relative. And then grandchildren or nieces and nephews. And then third degree is another step out. But once you get out that far, that's when it kind of gets really difficult to figure out. Now, the whole degree of relativity thing, not quite the Einstein version, but the degree of relationships, I guess you could say. It's not used a whole lot within the genealogy community. I think because of this very reason of that it's kind of confusing. Trying to see if I can pull up a good chart. Yeah, there we go, of consanguinity. So this kind of explains it in a sense. So there's you, and then you'll see each one's numbered as to the degree. Now there are various ways that people will look at this too. So like here we can see that this isn't lining up with how I defined it, because like I define siblings as a first degree relative. Here they're saying 2. So they're going by degrees of relationship by blood. See if I can find something better, because that's one of the confusing things about degrees of relationship as well, is that sometimes they're defined differently. So, okay, so like the National Cancer Institute defines first degree relative. Examples are a parent, sibling, or a child. So, hopefully I'm not jumping back and forth too much on this. I'm just trying to find one that's a really good breakdown. Yeah, I can't find anyone that's a good chart. So hopefully it kind of makes sense at this point for most of you. But this was one I thought would be interesting, because when you're looking at third degree relatives, you're looking at a point where it's not uncommon to not meet a lot of them, like great grandparents. A lot of them are going to pass before you're born, great aunts and great uncles. Depending on the age of your grandparents, it might be, if your grandparent was the younger of a big group of siblings, it's probably going to be a lot of great aunts and uncles who may pass before you're born, sort of thing. So for the answers, I thought it was interesting, 0 or don't know any biological family was 2%. And I'm guessing most of those are don't know any biological family. That's what I'm guessing. Now 10 or less, I decided on 10 or less because I figured, well, everyone has 8 great grandparents, and most people probably haven't met one of those great grandparents. I mean, honestly, in a lot of my experience, I'll talk to people and they won't even know the names of their great grandparents. So, wouldn't expect them to have even met them. So I figure, at least 8 and then maybe 1 or 2, so that's probably going to be the most common. So 10 or less, and then break it from there. And it kind of broke out pretty evenly. So 26% 10 or less, and then somewhere between 11 and 20, pretty similar, 24%. Not much of a variation, but then big drop for the 21 to 30. But then for 31 or higher, bigger than all of them. And just another great example of, I wish I had like 7 or 8 options to put in for these, for some of these. All right, let's see. My last great grandparent died a month before my brother was born. The first one passed away 13 years before my dad was born. Yeah. I know all my relatives is second degree, but everything further is so confusing when I don't have any tree in front of me to look things up. Yeah, when I did this, it took me probably at least 15, 20 minutes to sit and go through the tree and be like, okay, check all of my great aunts and great uncles, check all of my, great grandparents I didn't need to check. For first cousins, I know all of my first cousins. Don't have any nieces or nephews, so can't have any great nieces or great nephews. Don't have any children, so don't have any great grandchildren, or at least I don't think. And then don't have any half aunts or half uncles, or at least any that I know about. So it was pretty easy that way, And then for the or closer, I think I know all of my second degree relatives. I'm pretty sure I do. Yeah. So, all right. Yeah, Torsten, my folks are from County Tyrone and Antrim and County Cavan. Now I have a Discord for my channel, and some of the people that are in my Discord created a Discord specifically for Irish genealogy. So if you are into Discord and know how to navigate that, or especially if you're in my Discord, you can find your way to that Irish Discord, and that might be helpful for you. All right. So I see John's helping you out. Oh, how funny. How funny. If you're in Jared's Discord channel, you can message me there. I'm heading out, need to prepare for bed. John, thank you for being with us, especially from the hospital. Hope you are much better. And I'll see you on WikiTree in a few months. Wink, wink. Okay. So gazillion, first cousins equals second degree, second cousins equals third degree, first, yeah, at least Portuguese Catholic Church. See, and that's part of the difficulty is that it's defined differently in different areas. And I think the differences are like one in the legal realm of things like law enforcement and stuff. Right. That was what we always went by for first degree and second degree and third degree is what I used. But then for medical stuff, I guess that might change. But then on top of that, then you have the church records and just, yeah, anything that talks about consanguinity. Consanguinity. Okay. Let's continue with the polls. So this one was an interesting one, I thought, too, to talk about. How much has your family changed since you were born? Once again, with the third degree relatives or closer, add together the number of family members who have passed away with the number of family members who have been born. So basically, how many people have gone out of your life because they passed away, and how many people have joined into the family because they were born, sort of thing. So for me, my number is 18. So since I was born, the family has had a change of 18 people. So there's 17 members who passed away. So my one aunt, one grandmother, two great grandmothers, 8 great aunts, and then 5 great uncles. And then I have only had one third degree relative who was born after I was born. And that was a first cousin. I won't mention her name because I don't know if she's okay with that. But so I have actually quite a very small change for me. And I think that was one of the reasons why I chose third degree relative was because if I went to fourth degree relative, then for me, then I would have like, a lot of my first cousins have had children. And then, there's been a lot of second cousins who were born after me and stuff like that. So, yeah. All right. But anyway, for the results, 32% had no clue. Just show me the results. And I wonder how many of those were just, I don't want to do this math. 22% said 10 or less. 16% said 11 to 20. 13% said 21 to 30. And then 16% said 31 or more. Once again, making me wish we could extend that out and see what that, what that breakdown is. But my guess is it just gets smaller and smaller as you go out. So, I don't think it's very surprising just kind of seeing the, it's just slowly just gets smaller and smaller. And yeah. All right, let's check chat real quick. One of my great grandfathers died of a heart attack when one of my cousins was 12 years old. Wow. With my great grandmother, who I've met, died at 106. She had about 14 siblings who I haven't met any of them or their families. And honestly, so many people, it gets quite confusing. Wow. Yeah. With 14 siblings and knowing none of them, and then being being in a genealogy and trying to build out the tree. Yeah. That probably makes it really confusing. So for me, I've tried to reach out to so many of my cousins in the family. Not all of them will talk though, but I imagine with 14 siblings, and if at least a good majority of them had kids and grandkids and stuff, I imagine there's at least one or two that would have some sort of interest. But then again, it's trying to find the one that does, if most of them don't. Aiden, would it be possible to trace back an Irish ancestor when I only have 3%? It certainly could be possible. It might be very difficult, but there's a lot of things that you have to consider with that 3%. So the first thing is just considering all the possibilities with it. When you have 3%, if it's showing 3% Irish, the first possibility is, how true is that it is actually Irish? So one, if it's Irish, there's a possibility that maybe it's not actually Irish, maybe it was Scottish or English or Welsh or something else very closely related to Irish, because Irish is part of that Northwestern European grouping of things. So if you come from a Northwestern European ancestry, mostly, like, maybe you're Danish, or maybe you're from Sweden, or maybe even like Northern Germany or Northern France, or, the Netherlands, Belgium, or whatever, just kind of that Northwestern region of Europe, then you have a lot more question marks of how true is this. Then the other possibility is just the possibility of it being a false positive, that, kind of along the lines of what I just said before, but there's other possibilities of why it may be a false positive. But basically, it's just, it's showing up as 3% Irish, but you really don't have 3% Irish. So just considering all of that possibility, there still is the possibility that it is true that you have Irish ancestry and this is coming from that. And if the possibility is considered that it's coming from one specific ancestor, whereas we do need to consider it maybe coming from multiple distant ancestors, maybe through your dad's side, you have, a couple of ancestors who are Irish way, way back, and then same thing on mom's side, and that just adds up to this 3%, then that might not be findable. But if it's coming from one specific ancestor, you look at all of your family tree and there's only this one ancestor that's a recent one, then you'd want to consider this breakdown that I just put up on screen of what you typically expect from a certain ancestry. So 3%, we'd be looking at about a third great grandparent. So what that means is that if this 3% is coming from one recent ancestor, you're looking at most likely a third great grandparent, but could be a second great grandparent, or could be a fourth great grandparent, or maybe even further. So it is traceable, but difficult. So what you'd want to do, if you think that could be the case, if there's nothing else indicating that, yeah, this might not really be true positive, then what you want to do is try to build out your entire family tree and identify all your second great grandparents, all of your third great grandparents, all of your fourth great grandparents, and try to see if there's anyone that sticks out of, oh, this must be, they seem to be Irish. Now, like I said, if you're coming from, an English ancestry or a French ancestry, or, there's a lot of just the Northwestern European ancestries that have a lot of connections to Irish, population groups, then then basically you just need to consider that, okay, well, yeah, this could actually just be representing that. But if you're coming from, let's say that you're all Jewish readings except for 3% Irish, well, that stands out very much. And in that case, you have a much higher confidence that, yeah, that's probably more likely a more recent ancestor. And coming from one, because like I said, if it's coming from multiple, then these numbers, like let's say that, it's coming from not one recent ancestor, but it's actually coming from one recent ancestor on your mom's side and one from your dad's side. Well, that would mean that we'd half it. So now we're looking at a fourth great grandparent or a fifth, or, it just kind of gets further back. So hopefully that kind of helps explain that. Sorry, just jumping through some of the comments to catch up on chat. Okay, cool. So let's continue with the polls then. All right. Now, this one I did while I was editing my most recent video on the channel about my trip to Europe. If you haven't seen that yet, go to check it out. It's part 1, so it shows my trip in London. I'm not finishing up. I'm working hard on it. It's going to be at least a week, if not a little bit longer. But part 2 is about my time in Amsterdam. So that kind of got me thinking about this question. And I was like, this would be a good one. Have you ever traveled out of your country of residence for family history reasons? So this could be either research or to visit ancestral locations. So, whether you're going to, there's an archive or a church or a courthouse that I have to go in person to get these records, or it's, my family's buried here, visiting the cemetery, or this is the ancestral home and I wanted to visit, or just the ancestral town or something. So the reason last year I took a trip to London and Amsterdam to visit ancestral homes, cemeteries, synagogues, and most importantly, meet my cousins. But I've also done excessive traveling throughout the US, but obviously that's my home country. So most people, just a little bit over average, have not traveled outside of their uh, country for family history. But this is one I'd be really interested to break down by, what country of residence do you live in? Because I imagine the majority of people that are answering this are people that are from my US audience, because I feel like most people in the US don't travel out of the country as much as Europeans do. And a big part of that is just the size of the country, as well as, it's a little bit more of a deal to do that. And unless you have Canadian ancestry or some sort of, Central American or South American, Caribbean ancestry, then you're really not going to be, it's not a super easy trip to do family history travel for out of the country for Americans. Then just over a quarter of people, I've only traveled in my country of residence for family history. So actually, I completely forgot that was what I had asked. So I'm kind of wrong on what I just said before about this one, because never traveled for family history. I imagine that, a lot of people in the US have traveled throughout the country for family history reasons. But yeah, I guess it kind of makes it a little bit more surprising, 52%. But I don't know. All right. So 26% only within their country. 14%, yes, I've traveled to one country for family history. So, just one as opposed to multiple. Then, yes, I've traveled to multiple countries for family history. And then this was one of those cases where I was actually like, could I ask a fifth question? I actually can't think of another thing. And I was like, oh, wait, have you traveled to multiple continents? Because I think that adds an interesting, part to it. And, for one, not a lot of people have ancestry that is on multiple continents, but on top of that, traveling to multiple continents for family history, if you do have that as well, that's a big undertaking to go to multiple continents. So just a fun thing I thought could also, get people thinking about, what kind of traveling have you done, and maybe what kind of traveling do you want to do, um, this question is complicated because, like, my family went to a country a lot because we have history from there, but not for doing genealogy and not directly to go to family history location. Yeah, I guess I will say I was trying to figure out a good way to word it, because I thought about that, and that's why I kind of put this sentence. This could be for either research or to visit ancestral locations. So I guess there is kind of a, did you go there because the family came from there and you were like, okay, we're going back there because this is where our family's from? And then even if you don't technically do any family history stuff, just for the idea of this is where our family's from, I think that falls into the definition of yes, very loosely, obviously, but I think it does because the inspiration was the family history, even if you don't utilize the fact of being in the country to visit things further or research or whatever. Yeah, living vicariously through your England trip videos. One of these days I'll get there. I have the address that my great great grandpa lived at when he was 17, thanks to the 1861 census I found. Yeah, and that's what I show in the video of how I found the address that I visited in London with my cousin, of where our family used to live, was thanks to the UK census. So yeah, very cool. Haas Manning, I'm missing one second great grandparent, 5 third great great grandparents, and 25 fourth great great grandparents on my tree. The numbers grow the furthest I've gone back. Yeah, definitely gets further and further. And I think that was one of the first questions I ever asked on my polls was, how far back did you get until you had 50% of these ancestors or something like that? Can't remember exactly. Okay. I'm German and my family was German for generations. We could question whether East Prussia and Alsace-Lorraine still would count as within my country as it was back then, but it isn't anymore. Yeah, I think those count. When I for this question, the way I was thinking of it was, present day countries. Obviously, so like when I go to, I'm probably not going to go anytime soon, unfortunately. But if I were to go to Ukraine to visit my ancestral town of Sokorani, it's in present day Ukraine, but it was in Romania. So if technically I was Romanian and I went to go visit it, it'd still be a different country because I'm traveling out of my country of residence at this point. But it does, I think that's with us genealogists and historians and stuff, when we're talking about areas, especially, Alsace-Lorraine is a crazy one, how much that line is jumped around. But just, we kind of always understand that, like, oh yeah, well, maybe we're talking about Ukraine today, but, we're talking 150 years ago, we might not call it Ukraine. We might call it the Russian Empire. If we're talking about it 70 years ago, would we be calling it Ukraine, or would USSR, what are we going to be calling it? So yeah, I guess that's kind of how I'm thinking of it. All right. I'm going to jump back to the polls. I saw a lot of people kind of talking about some of their travels and such, which is awesome. Definitely everyone chat away. But all right, so going along, what's the oldest known ancestral grave that you have visited? And for me, this is my 10th great-grandfather, Jacob Israel Belmonte, one of the founders of the Portuguese Jewish community of Amsterdam, who died in 1629, was born in the 1500s. And I visited his grave when I went to Amsterdam last year, which you will see in the video that will be coming out soon. But this one, we had 11% where they visited no ancestral graves, which I think that could also be one of the, I wonder for these folks why that might be. And, part of me thinks that maybe it has to do with just people that are maybe adopted or fostered, or just maybe don't know their biological family, something like that. But then for grandparents are closer, 15%, great grandparents, 30%, which I kind of was thinking that was probably going to be about the higher amount, was like great grandparents or second great grandparents sort of thing. Because I feel like, you have 8 great grandparents, and I don't think it's that uncommon for, at some point in your life, if you have your grandparents still alive, for them to take you to the grave of their parents. I don't remember actually ever going to visit any of, I think before I started doing genealogy, the oldest grave that I had visited was my grandfather's. Both of my grandfathers and my grandmother. Those were the graves that I had visited. But then obviously afterwards that kind of expanded very quickly. But anyway, yeah. So great grandparents, not surprising to see that's twice as much as grandparents as the oldest ancestral grave. Was surprised to see second great grandparents kind of drop so low, but I guess maybe not too surprising. I guess maybe I just always expect people maybe to know a bit more about their family and do all that. But then I wouldn't even hit second great grandparents if I hadn't been into genealogy. So, and it took me a while to actually, before I ever was able to visit any of my second great grandparent, the graves of any of my second great grandparents. And then third great grandparents are more distant, 25%. And I would really love to bring that out to like fifth, sixth great grandparents, because especially for a genealogy crowd, I'd be interested to see where it drops to almost none. Because that's what I expect is, once you hit about fourth, fifth great grandparents, maybe sixth, that's where you hit the point where it drops super low, because even for genealogists, it's very difficult to locate graves that far back, let alone even be able to visit them. All right, now continuing to this post, for those who don't know, and actually, you know what, let me see if I'm sharing in a way that's proper. Share screen. Okay, so I'm going to have to do it this way. It won't let me. Oh, that's why it won't let me. Okay, there we go. Sorry, everyone. Just adjusting a little bit. So basically, just what I wanted to do was because I made this video. There we go. Oh, did I already have it? Oh, it was. Okay. Let's see. Yep. Okay. All right, there we go. I think I got it. Is it? No. Let's edit this a bit. All right. So I made this.
One word to describe SG.
Well, not this.
You would be opportunity. I would describe.
Hopefully, everyone could hear that.
Hello, everyone.
All right. So I'm gonna play this video. I made this video to help advertise for this conference coming up. For those who don't know, I am on the board of directors for the International Association of Jewish Genealogical Societies. We have our conference coming up in Philly. And so this is the video I made for the conference. And since I'm going across it and it's only 2.5 minutes, I figured I'd play it for y'all. So hopefully the audio works. If it doesn't, let me know.
Hello, everyone. I would like to invite you to beautiful and historic Philadelphia this coming August from the 18th to the 22nd. I am Felicia Mode Alexander, president of the Jewish Genealogical and Archival Society of Greater Philadelphia, and we are the local hosts of a major conference sure to be of interest to anyone researching or considering researching Jewish ancestry. Best of all, this will not be virtual. It will not be on your computer sitting at home. It will be live and in person with the opportunity to interact with many like-minded individuals. So why should you come to Philadelphia? First of all, our city has a rich Jewish heritage dating back to colonial days when America first welcomed Jews to its shores. 350 years later, the acclaimed Weitzman National Museum of American Jewish History is here, right across the street from the historic Liberty Bell, the Constitution Center, Independence Hall, and just a stone's throw from several of America's oldest synagogues and Jewish cemeteries. And if you are a foodie, we have great restaurants too. Most importantly, however, hundreds of genealogists from all over the world will convene in Philadelphia to learn from over 100 historians and researchers, and hopefully connect with long-lost cousins thanks to paper trail sleuthing and today's state-of-the-art DNA research. Over the 5 days of the conference, there will be over 140 lectures, which will focus on 6 themes to learn about Jewish roots, as well as joining beginners workshops, computer technology sessions to learn how to use the amazing online sources available to us, book signings, a film festival, and a large exhibit area as well. More information, including conference and hotel registration, can be found on our website and Facebook page. I hope this brief introduction to the IHAGS 2024 conference whets your genealogy appetite. What discoveries will you make? Will we discover that we are cousins? I look forward to meeting you here in August. And if you see me, please say hello. You never know what surprises are in store for you at the Genealogy Conference in Philadelphia this summer. See you soon.
Yeah. So figured I'd play that pretty quick. Nice little advertisement there for the conference for everyone. So if you didn't know that was going on, now you do. Okay, I want to get this nice and flush. Boom. Okay, that looks a lot better. Thank you. I did see this big difference on Ancestry and 23andMe compared to MyHeritage. Received Ashkenazi Jewish, Balkan, Finland, and Middle Eastern, with 4% being the lowest amount of each DNA. Trustworthy. It's hard to say. I mean, they're with 4% being the lowest amount of each. So I don't know if it's MyHeritage. MyHeritage, I think, really want to wait until they roll out the new one. I mean, for years now, they've really been the one that more than any other site, when it comes to the percentages, I hear people complaining about it does not match up to what they know of their family tree. And then they take the all of the other tests and find all of those match up much better. So, if you're talking about on MyHeritage, that this is where these are coming from, then maybe, just wait until they do that update. I don't know when it's going to be, sometime this summer. I don't think they've announced the official date yet. They've just kind of general sometime. But I mean, 4%, you're right outside of that trace result range. You're still you're in that spot where at 4%, there's like a medium confidence with things, but obviously with some context. So if it's, MyHeritage, like I said, and you're looking at these other sites, and these sites have nothing that comes even close to what MyHeritage is giving you, that, maybe could explain like, oh, well, they're giving me Ashkenazi Jewish and Balkan and Middle Eastern here, but on this other site, they're giving me something that, not too far away. And maybe it's just something like that. But I think that's the other thing is if, from your picture, I assume you have a large amount of African ancestry. So I would imagine that, depending on what your known African ancestry is, especially if you have no known European or anything like that, and this really stands out, then that gives it more confidence. Basically, looking at things on a continental level changes the confidence of how to look at things. So hopefully that was helpful. I have a grave of my grandparents, 13 generations from myself. They were buried in 1596 in the old church Oudekerk of Amsterdam on the High Choir. Wow, that's really cool. I in the video I visit the Oudekerk. Oudekerk. I'm always really bad with pronouncing that because my family in Amsterdam lived on Kerkstraat, New Kerkstraat, Church, Gark, Oudekerk. It spite me. Okay. Thorsten, I think Strasbourg was German for a long time, and isn't it French now? Yeah, it is. I think you're right. Strasbourg. Or maybe, I don't know. There's a Strasbourg in France and a Strasbourg in Germany. Where's that? Yeah, and that's right outside of Berlin. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. All right. Maybe MyHeritage just teasing us with the possibility of an update. I don't know. I don't think they'd really want to do that. they're definitely. I think there's gonna be an update. It's just a matter of when. So, I imagine it'll be this summer. So we're almost tomorrow's halfway through June. So, yeah, hopefully soon. Yeah. Also, the concept of Germany is one thing is quite new if we think of in grandparents. Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you just look at the past 200 to 300 years, the borders that we know as Germany today were parts of a lot of other countries. I mean, northern parts were part of Denmark, like Schleswig-Holstein region, then the Alsace-Lorraine region, then I don't know. I'm sure there's crazy other stuff going on with the Polish border too, and all of that. Then you got to consider the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Lithuanian Polish Commonwealth, and just all that fun history. All right, gotcha. Ancestry gives me Middle East or Spain with updates, but now has completely gone away. 23andMe still gives me 1.5% North African, Middle Eastern. Yeah, so my guess is if Ancestry went away, sometimes if it goes away, that could be indicative that it might not really be true. But when you've done testing on other sites and the other sites haven't had it go away, sometimes it could just be that you have such a small amount that, like Ancestry may have just ended up filtering it out or something, whereas 23andMe didn't. So, it's definitely, I say this all the time. I always like to think of these percentages in terms of a confidence slider. So, how much confidence do we have is how true it is. So, if we're right in the middle, Ancestry, the bigger portions of it were on MyHeritage. So, confidence goes down a little bit. I guess this way that makes more sense on the screen. So, it goes down. And then, okay, well, Ancestry, theirs goes away, the Middle East and Spain. Okay, confidence goes down. 23andMe still is there, and then MyHeritage still is there. So, just a tad up sort of thing, so, but then there's the question of which one do you go with more? You've got the 1.5% on 23andMe, but then MyHeritage is giving you a lot more on the other stuff. So, yeah. And then, I see Steven talking about 80 intro. Is that what you mean, 80 intro? Is it? I think it's 80 intro, the Brazilian company. Yeah, 80 intro. So yeah, this company actually, they do have relative matching on here. I don't know how good I think they have relative matching on here, don't they? But one of the things with it, if I remember correctly, when they do DNA testing for you, okay, maybe they don't have the genetic matching, but when they do the DNA testing for you, in terms of the number of SNPs they use, I believe it's much less than the number of SNPs tested for most other companies. So for most companies like 23andMe, Ancestry, all of that. Oh wait, I just realized I need to reset up the screen share because I had it the wrong way, so you couldn't see everything I was doing. Okay, this should be a lot better. Okay, so yeah, the website for 80 intro. That's what I was scrolling through as I was talking before, trying to figure out if they had the matching or whatnot. But my understanding is they have far fewer SNPs that they're testing than the other companies. So with these companies, they have about 700,000 SNPs tested. And I don't remember what it is for 80 intro, but I want to say that I remember seeing a number of like just over 100,000. Oh, okay, never mind. I'm wrong. They actually have a whole blog post that says they do 700,000. So maybe that's something that they changed at some point. So they're analyzing, 700,000. That's right up there. So interesting. All right. Well, yeah. There you go. I don't have much experience with 80 intro other than seeing a lot of their tests in GEDmatch from time to time. Sorry, jumping through a lot. I know some of these responses is stuff I said before. I see Anna, hey, only able to watch a bit currently at OGS. Yeah, hopefully OGS is a lot of fun. Been seeing a lot of posts from that. So I thought about possibly even going myself, but then I just a lot of money, a lot of time, and yeah. So okay. So back to the polls. So a question that I think we've talked about a lot in my channel. And that's which is your favorite genealogy-based American TV show? Now, if you're not based in America, it's very possible you're not familiar with any of these. But I think I've talked about every single one of these on my channel at least a little bit. And for those who don't remember, I did a ranking of the TV show, Genealogy TV shows a while back for a live stream. And that actually might be when I posted this, was kind of part of that. But as expected, Finding Your Roots was the number one. I think in the US, they're just, Finding Your Roots has had so many guests of varying backgrounds and specialties and, you know, whatever they do. And I don't know, it makes sense that they're the biggest show. I was a little surprised at how much further up they were than Who Do You Think You Are? But I guess it kind of makes sense. You know, I certainly like Finding Your Roots more, especially for the American version of Who Do You Think You Are? Then Relative Race comes in a very close tie third with Long Lost Family, or not close tie, very, very small margin of winning for third for Relative Race, which if you're not familiar with Relative Race, go watch a bunch of my reactions to it. I know it's not available in all over the world to view through BYU to see the full thing. Whether or not I'm going to do reactions to Relative Race in the future again, I don't know. I know a lot of people ask me about that, but it's kind of a lot of work. It was a lot of hassle. And then every time I did them, the people, the music that was in the video would be claimed. And then it, you know, so it was like, it's a lot of work and effort. And yeah, so I don't know. It's a possibility. I haven't, you know, ruled it out, but, you know, we'll have to see. Then after that, Long Lost Family, which Long Lost Family UK is way better than Long Lost Family US. And part of that really has to do with just the respect for the guests. Long Lost Family has done multiple times where they find out the person the guest was looking for had passed away. And the UK always says, we tell them off camera, which is respectful. US, they're like, all right, we're going to go meet up and tell them on camera and get their reaction. And then I remember one time there was an episode where it's like the person was just, you know, they're like, well, how do you feel? And the person explained it. And they're like, but doesn't that make you sad? And doesn't that make you want to cry? And like, they just kept pushing them. Like, you know, I think I joked about this on another stream, so I'll say it again. But basically, they did what I like to joke about, which I call cry, bitch, cry, where it's just like, you know, when producers for a lot of these drama TV shows for whatever thing try to, like, you know, they get, you know, want to make you the audience cry or want to get the guests crying or, you know, whatever. And just, I remember this one episode where it's just like, leave the person alone. Like they're obviously taking it in. Why are you trying to get them to act like that on TV? That's so ridiculous. And so I lost a lot of respect for that show after that. But for the UK version, they don't do that. So yeah. And then last, Genealogy Roadshow, which makes sense because I think that's far less known than all the other shows. You know, most people don't even know that Genealogy Roadshow existed. For those who don't know, it's a PBS show where, very similar to Antiques Roadshow, people would come in and ask, instead about, you know, their antiques, they'd ask about their family. So probably a lot similar to a lot of the questions that I get from a lot of folks. You know, that's probably why they did it, was, you know, we have so many people always asking about their family history and stuff like that. Let's do a show where we can help people out and explain it to them. And so they did that. I think it was one season. It was like 5 or 6 episodes maybe. And it was enjoyable. I know it was kind of, you know, it was presented in that Antiques Roadshow sort of way, which, you know, it didn't detract from the stories that much, but it did a little bit, I think. So yeah, but worthwhile checking out if you've never seen it. So yeah. Genealogy Roadshow. Wow. I like Genealogy Roadshow. Oh, hey, Brian. Hey, Brian, I think I missed your hello. And then some of Genealogy Roadshow on Prime. Okay, that's good to know. So if you have Prime, check it out. Let's see. Yeah, they milk it for tears on the camera. Yeah, they really do. It gets really bad. Like sometimes when I watch some of these shows with my mom too, and we'll get to a point where she like starts crying kind of hard, and I'll turn to her, I'll be like, cry, bitch, cry. And she'll start laughing because it's like, you know, they've got the music going on the TV and they got everything, and they're just like doing everything they can to get you, the audience, to cry, or to, you know, the people on the camera to cry. Have you seen the Australia version of Long Lost Family? I don't think I've seen the Australian version of Long Lost Family, but I have seen the Australian version of Who Do You Think You Are? Which is, I enjoyed that a lot. The ones they did, but I can't remember how many of them I saw. I don't think I saw a ton of those, but yeah. Okay, so continuing. Actually, let's see where we're at. All right, it's 4:37. So yeah, I think I'll probably go for maybe another 20 minutes or so. Yeah. 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 If you cry on animal commercials, they're gonna get you. Actually, here I'm gonna see if I can pull up bu- 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 there was a meme I made at one point that was basically just like, getting ready to watch Relative Race. We're gonna see if I can find it. I'm sure I'll be able to. Maybe not all the images are loading. That's weird. Maybe I can't. Oh, there we go. There we go. Getting ready for a new episode of Relative Race. Yeah, because Relative Race really is. I mean, that's so emotional. I mean, for those who are unfamiliar with Relative Race, you have these multiple teams of people where on each team there's at least one person that basically has a ton of family they've never met. Most cases, it's like an adopted situation or something similar. And then they go on a trip around the country where every day they compete in these challenges where at the end of the day, they end up meeting a new relative. And sometimes it's, a distant cousin. Sometimes it's their sister or brother or parent or nieces and nephews or uncle. There's some really, really, really intense episodes. I mean, imagine people who are, in their 50s who have been looking for their parents their entire lives, and then all of a sudden they meet their dad. It's going to be emotional. I'm getting a little teary eyed just talking about it. So yeah, it's a good show. It's a good show. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So now this one I thought was an interesting one to do. What is the furthest you could trace a line of your family using only photographs? So what I mean is where you have a photograph of each family member connecting between you and this ancestor. So for me, furthest back I can go is my third great grandfather, Rafael Nunez Vaz, and my third great grandfather, Morris Moscow. I have pictures of both of them. And so, but it's not just that I have pictures of both of them. I have a picture of myself, my mom, my grandfather, my great grandfather, then his parents, and then their fathers. So I have an unbroken line of photographs. So that's what I meant by that. So with this one, I didn't put any none or don't know option. I just did grandparents or less because I figure most people that are especially watching my channel into genealogy have a picture of their parents, their grandparents, and at least one of their great grandparents. So I figured, we'll do a grandparents or less, and that'll kind of encompass the none don't know. So only 10%, very low, not too surprising. But then I was a little surprised that it was kind of even throughout. Granted, it just slowly gets lower each one. So for great grandparents, 26%, second great grandparents, 23%, third great grandparents, 20%, and then fourth great grandparents are further, 22%. Although I imagine that, as you get further out, obviously it gets lower and lower. But one of those ones where I would really love to see, at what point does it drop off greatly? Because I think, once you get out to fourth or fifth or sixth, we're going to see it drop extremely low. We've got, honestly, I was kind of surprised to see 20% with third great grandparents. So, it makes me even wonder, if it was just fourth great grandparents, how much does it drop there? So, yeah, kind of interesting thing. All right. What? Oh no. Okay. I think I'm back. I think I'm back. I think I'm back. I don't know where it died. I don't know where it died. So hopefully I got through saying all of that. Hello everybody. Hello. I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. Okay. Let's see if I can catch up on chat. Yeah. Oh, Karma. Oh, are you going to be doing reactions to any new seasons of Relative Race? One team actually was in my city. Like I said, I'm not sure if I will. You know, I wish I could. It's just a matter of time and all of that, and just the amount of time and effort it goes into just doing each one. Because, I mean, it's, you know, if it's an hour-long episode, that means that when I sit down and record each episode, that's at least like an hour and a half, if not 2 hours, because I think you all know how much of a chatty Cathy I can be in some of these reactions. So, yeah, it's just a lot. So it's not. It's a possibility. Yeah. I have a hard time watching American genealogy series and documentaries. Yeah, I'm not surprised. They're, you know, they can be a little overwhelming with how much they harp on the drama and stuff. Found out Jordan Peele is my cousin because of Finding Your Roots. We share a pair of great grandparents. Oh wow, that's pretty close too. I mean, if you're talking sharing a pair of great grandparents, it's a third cousin. Assuming that your great grandparents are his great grandparents. So yeah, that's interesting. I feel like you mentioned that in a stream before too. I have 5 lines, including myself. Oh, for the photos, very cool. I have photos of my maternal great grandparents. My mom's cousin shared a really bad photocopy of my great grandfather, born 1833. Wish I knew where the original was. Yeah, you know what's really funny too, and I've said this to a bunch of my cousins, is, you know, you never know what you're going to have, and a lot of people sometimes don't realize that they're the ones that have stuff. Or, you know, what you want to do sometimes is do kind of a genealogy of, or the inheritance, kind of figuring out, you know, well, who inherited what and when, because then you can kind of follow who should have the old photographs or the originals if they were inherited and not tossed for some reason, which sometimes people do that. It blows me away how some people will get rid of super old photos and things like that because they're like, well, I just don't know who any of these people are. It's like, who cares? It's your family. And yeah, I don't know. The things that make genealogists cringe. Okay, yeah, we now up to the part of, yes, my yep. Oh, that's great. Famous last words. Oh no. Okay, so you at least heard me up till the oh no. Okay. Yeah, looks like it froze. Back. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm not back from 1920. No, I'm kidding. I know you're talking about. I have a great grandfather picture. Cool. Yeah, our great grandfathers were brothers, same mom and dad. So more than, you know, that means that your grandfather was a sibling, or not a sibling, excuse me, a first cousin to his grandparents. Don't know if it's, you know, grandma or grandpa. So Map of Boston. Yes, you got it. You got it. Okay. I need to, well, it's a lot. Yeah. All right. Me being indecisive, everybody. Me being indecisive. I was just trying to think if I should bring up the poll thing to keep going through them or if I should just kind of call it about here because I am getting close to about 2 hours. So I know my dog boys would they would love me to end this and take them on a walk. The spoiled little dogs. So yeah, I think that's what I'll do. I think it's been pretty good. So hope you all enjoy doing that. Let me know if you like doing the polls in the live stream because I thought it's kind of a really fun way to, for one, go through the polls and make use of it. But two, also just, a fun way to really think about your family tree in different ways or just think about different stuff related to genealogy or bring up things that people might not know, like some of these genealogy TV shows. But be sure to, I'll go ahead and just pull up the community tab. Why not? Be sure to keep an eye on my community tab so that you can, go and answer all the questions. I see, actually funny. Now that I'm going into it, I see a lot of people while I've been doing the live stream and have been commenting on on some of the older polls. All right, let's get this shared. But yeah, basically just keep an eye out on the page. I'm going to be posting lots of polls, even more as we go along. And I might do some of the older ones too. Something for to repeat again. Gosh, I'm talking like a weirdo. Something to repeat that I said a couple of times already. I did a poll reviewing a lot of the much older polls. I did a video doing that, but I never released it. And I'm going to be releasing that as an exclusive video for my Patreon patrons and YouTube members. So if you're a Patreon patron or YouTube member, you should see access to that. Although I think there's one the dollar tier for Patreon patrons won't have access to it, but everyone else will. I think I have to double check what I have it set up as. So, but I'm just scrolling through right now to some of the really, really old ones from a few years back, and you can see me posting. Oh, that's great. That's a good photo. Oh God, that haircut. I hated that haircut. Oh gosh. Hated that haircut. Hated that. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. With all that said, new reaction coming out on Monday. It's going to be a very interesting one. Very curious to see how the internet's going to take that. It's going to be to the Jubilee, who's the I don't remember exactly how they have it titled, but it's basically, who's the blackest of yeah. So it's going to be an interesting one because it's going to be a very interesting discussion of the clash between cultural definition versus ancestral definition, which is, I think, a big clash when we talk about DNA tests and ancestry all the time. A lot of people come in here with notions of culture opposed to ancestral origin, which sometimes match up, sometimes can actually cause further confusion. But thank you, everybody, for joining today. Be sure to check out all of my recent videos that have been coming out. If you haven't seen any of those, tons of stuff have been coming out. And I'll be doing a reaction next week on the reaction channel, a live stream on the reaction channel next week, where I'll be answering questions and stuff like that. So I think that's good enough at this point. So once again, thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday, or for those who are in Europe or elsewhere, and it's already Saturday, have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Thank you all so much. I'm Jarrett Ross, the GeneaVlogger.